Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story. Boss said that if I don't like the job and the lesson is more important to me, I can quit, so I did. The second story. Landlord didn't fix the washing machine, so I billed him for the laundry. The third story. Client burned her mouth because she ordered the hot sauce on her sandwich. And the first story is, if you aren't going to be here on time, don't bother coming back. At the time of this story, it was the summer between my third and fourth years attending a state university's business school. I had been working in various bars, restaurants, and nightclubs throughout my time at college to cover the expenses my scholarships didn't cover. I had, at this point in time, done almost every job in those types of establishments and was constantly trying to expand that because my intended career path, which I did not end up in that career at all, was in the industry and I wanted to know every aspect. The story is about what happened when I left a prior employer who said they weren't going to train me on bar because they had no need for more bartenders. It was the next position to learn for me, and I took my first bartending position. I got hired to bartend at this steakhouse restaurant. It was a pretty slow place. I get hired just after the spring semester ended. I had signed up to take a summer class though, and I let the manager know that when I applied for the job. I let the manager know what date the summer class was going to start, and gave him a copy of my class schedule with an updated sheet with my availability 3 weeks in advance. I reminded him of it again next week, and he said he needed a copy of my class schedule or my updated availability, so I provided him with another copy. Same thing the week before classes started. The schedule went up for the week. Wouldn't you know it, I'm working every single time I have class that week. I go to the manager. I remind him what we had discussed and that he needs to find someone else to cover those shifts. He says I should have provided him with a copy of my class schedule or written notice of the change in my availability. I remind him that I did so 3 times in the weeks leading up to this, and I reiterate that he needs to find someone else to work those shifts. He tells me that's not going to happen, and I need to be there to cover those shifts. I tell him the best I can do is to come by after class and work after class is over, which will mean there will be 2 hours when either the manager on duty will have to cover the bar, the day shift bartender will have to stay late, or there will be no bartender. Manager does not like this. He tells me I need to be more responsible. I respond and tell him that I am being responsible. I'm putting my education and future above a single bartending job that I've only had for a few weeks, and that I'm not going to sacrifice my education and future because he doesn't want to deal with the change in my availability that he knew would be coming when he hired me. I make it clear that my education is my first priority, and that if he wishes to see a demonstration of whether or not his need to have someone cover that shift is higher on my priority list than my education, then he can leave me on the schedule as it is. Boss responds and says that's insubordination, and tells me if I'm not going to be there on time, don't bother showing up at all. So, I don't. I don't bother showing up for any more shifts after that day, even on the days before classes started. I got an angry phone call, of course, and just said that I decided to do exactly as I was told. Since I already knew I wasn't going to show up on time for those shifts, I just wouldn't bother to show up at all anymore. The restaurant was closed less than 6 months after that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that poor management played a substantial part in its failure. Initially, the boss should have listened to you. You warned him about your classes and that you would not be able to come to work. That he ignored your notice is his problem. You were right to quit your job. Your education should come first, because you can find a job at another steakhouse quickly. Poor work organization is not your fault, and there's no need to hold on to this job. No wonder that steakhouse closed after 6 months. At my last job at the store, I took classes at the university. I'd worked for them for years and was otherwise flexible and reliable. But when I got the class schedule, I always asked not to sign up for the days I had classes. One day, management made a comment to me about my classes and was unhappy about my schedule at the university. And I told them, if you make me choose between work and study, the university will win every time. Crappy less than $10 an hour or maybe an education getting a decent job? Yeah, I know which I'll take. They got over it and there were no more complaints. The second story is, not so handy landlord won't properly fix washing machine and dryer. About 20 years ago, I was dating the man I would later marry. He had an apartment that was a quad but wasn't surrounded by the best neighbors. It was sold, but he was kept on as a tenant by the new landlord. He wasn't a bad landlord per se, but he fancied himself a handyman, and he was cheap. So the washer and dryer, included in the rental, both break, and the landlord comes in to fix my boyfriend's setup. It works but only temporarily, and they keep breaking over and over again. It goes on for months. Boyfriend, who's a model tenant, finally complains lightly, saying that he's been going over to his mom's to do laundry. But sometimes he has to do it late, so he's been having to spend money at the laundromat. The landlord says that my boyfriend can bill him for the laundry, and the landlord will reimburse if things break down again, and to make sure it's all documented by time, date, and amount. Then the landlord says he's going to take a look at it right now, confident somehow in the skills that he hasn't shown. They broke again. I'm far less tolerant about these things, but my SO doesn't like to be any trouble to anyone. Still, he's really tired of not being able to do his laundry at home, but thought it was really good of the landlord to offer to pay for his quarters at the laundromat. Bless his heart, and cue malicious compliance. This problem has gone on for 6 months, and I'm going to be solving it. I tell my boyfriend that he'll then have to keep track of the quarters he spends, by date, time, and amount, and since there's no receipt, they might have to fight it out over the amount. And I just know he hates conflict. Plus, there's the time and gas he spends, which while he could bill for it, any lawyer would argue that he would have spent time awaiting his laundry anyway at home. I tell him to send his laundry out for service because the service provides receipts. But won't that be expensive, he asks? I grin inwardly and say, it might be, but it's the only way to provide adequate documentation he's asking for. You can't prove what you spent at a laundromat, but you can with a laundry service. You'll include a copy of the bills with your rent, and a note saying that you've subtracted the amount that it costs to do your laundry this month, as the washer and dryer has been included in the rental agreement, and hasn't been working consistently properly for 6 months. Since there isn't documentation for the last 6 months, of course we won't be retroactively billing him. Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll write the note, and I will be sure to thank him for providing this in lieu of getting it fixed. It really is nice of him. Okay, he says. That sounds good, but how do you even arrange for that? I know dry cleaning, but this is just laundry. I'll take care of the details. No problem, I reply. They charge by the pound and load, so I made sure to also include all the stuff he had put off washing since it wasn't a top priority. He'd only been doing the essentials for fear one of the others would break mid-cycle, and because he felt he was taking advantage of his mother. And boy howdy, it really was expensive having a laundry service to do all his laundry. I arranged for regular pickup and drop-off that was convenient for my SO. They even folded his underwear. The rent check he handed over was substantially lighter by more than $200, but all receipt copies did have the time, date, and amount. Faced with the prospect of such a bill each month, the landlord scheduled an actual repairman to fix the machines one day, after rent was handed over. I think he was expecting a partial accounting of quarters at the laundromat, and that SO would still be doing some of his laundry for free at Mom's house. You're a smart guy. I can imagine the look on his face when he saw the laundry bill. But still, facing the situation you did, I would call out for a service too. Check your state's law. Pretty sure this requires some sort of small claims action. I don't think the owner was a bad guy, but it dragged and dragged, and I don't think the landlord really realized how long it was really going on, and the inconvenience it was causing. While he was doing something in response, I think he thought a temporary repair was in order, but it wasn't. But on the other hand, I can say that the owner did the right thing. I don't recall a place where I lived and was voluntarily offered reimbursement for my expenses when the appliances broke. When the microwave in my apartment broke, it took my crappy landlord a month to fix it, and I was categorically not offered reimbursement for takeout food. The last story is, self-titled Bee from Hell gets exactly what she asks for. I worked as a waitress for a restaurant in my hometown for over 4 years since I was only 14. I seen and dealt with a lot of not great customers, but this woman was definitely in the top 5 worst. Anyway, she came in the restaurant pretty frequently and was just one of those demanding customers. Usually I'd try my best to meet her unreasonable demands, even though she was extremely rude. She would insult what I was wearing, and didn't tip well. She always ordered the same thing, a hot turkey sandwich, the gravy extra hot. The gravy's already hot and there's no way to heat it up more without burning it or microwaving it. And if it goes in the microwave, the gravy gets runny, and the sandwich gets soggy as a result. So usually we just bring it to her as is. One day she comes in, and this day my new manager, who's the owner's daughter, is working in the kitchen with one of the other cooks. It's my turn to take the table, and so I do, and she's rude and orders what she always does. But I guess today she just wants her gravy extra hot, so after I turn around to put the order in the kitchen window, she gets up to follow me behind the counter to the window, nudges me away from it and yells to the cook. She doesn't know one is the manager because I don't think she would have done so. Hi, I'm the Bee from Hell, and I want my gravy so hot it burns my mouth, and smiles and goes and sits back down. We're all taken aback and it's a family restaurant and there are other customers. I'm embarrassed after being shoved to the side. I go to the back end of the kitchen to process what just happened. My manager's not having it. She says don't worry, I'm taking care of it. A few minutes later, she hands me an oven mitt to carry out this woman's plate. The gravy is practically steam at this point. I'm sure my manager microwaved the gravy for probably 5 minutes or more. I serve it to the woman and say, "My manager made this just how you asked for." She's seated right next to the counter, so I get to watch this all go down. At first, she looks so smug. She takes the first bite and her face distorts, and she spits it out as she's clearly burned her mouth. This causes quite a scene. I walk over, I smile politely and say, "How is everything?" in the fakest customer service voice I can. She says quietly and red-faced, "I must be having an allergic reaction or something." She doesn't touch her food for the rest of the time the people with her are eating. She's just sitting there silently. They usually get pie for dessert, but this time her boyfriend just pays and they leave and go. Edit. I feel like I should provide a little further details about what happened afterwards for those wondering. This happened many years ago, probably almost 4. I've seen the woman a handful of times since then. She also went back to the restaurant to eat a few times, still demanding but less aggressive. I do feel bad she got hurt, but I also feel like A, she asked for it, and B, probably shouldn't have shoved visibly steaming gravy into her mouth. Also, since I've seen her around and seen her eat since, I'm sure she made a fine recovery from the incident. She never got lawyers involved. It's a small town and the business never really suffered from it. I think she was probably too embarrassed to mention it. She never ordered that sandwich again. I'll probably go back to waitress over the summer, as I'm away at school and actually enjoyed the job mostly, and I assure everyone I will not be weaponizing gravy, or any food for that matter, in the restaurant ever again. She came in the restaurant a few times, since she just doesn't order that sandwich anymore. I think she was probably fine. It just shocked her and embarrassed her. She just drank her drink for the rest of the night and left. I don't think any legal action is coming at this point. This customer ordered hot sauce and she got it. The manager got back at you for pushing you around. A good manager that stands up for the employees. Because when I read new manager, I was so worried this was going to turn out very differently. Glad she had your back. I feel bad she got hurt as well, but it was her own fault. She got exactly what she asked for, and I'll bet she didn't eat any other hot or warm food for several days. Besides, she could have checked how hot the food was first and then eaten it. You shouldn't disrespect the employees who serve you. I remember a story that happened at McDonald's. A woman ordered coffee and it was very hot. She accidentally spilled it on herself and sued. McDonald's paid her a large sum of money and changed the temperature of their coffee. But in the story, the woman asked for the hot gravy herself, so did she come back to your restaurant after that? I wondered what she ordered next time. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.